With Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the rest of the world gets one big question that gets dropped on its shoulders. What should our response be? Do we do nothing? Do we impose sanctions against Russia? Do we send resources to Ukraine? Or do we go full out and send troops and our military to back up this country defending itself? Now, as of right now, the main choice of action has been economic sanctions. We've cut Russia out from the world economy, we don't do business with them, we've frozen their international assets with the intent to drive Russia into a recession, with the hope of increasing the likelihood of bank runs, hyperinflation, a weaker economy, and to hopefully have Putin change his mind and come with his hands up, his tail between his legs, and say, "I'm sorry, I'm gonna withdraw my forces." In a perfect world, that would be the case. But of course, the world is far from perfect, and Putin is far from one to say sorry. In this video, I'm going to show the key economic sanctions that have been put in place against Russia, and let's see how likely are these sanctions to stop the Russia-Ukraine war. As soon as Russia invaded Ukraine, the European Union, US, UK, and its allies swiftly decided to exclude some Russian banks from the SWIFT network. Now, apart from that being a bad pun, I apologize, this is a big deal. It's never been done before against a country as large as Russia. It's one thing to do it against Iran. Russia, it's a completely different story. Many economists consider this the nuclear option of economic sanctions. So, okay, SWIFT stands for the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. So there's some big words in there, but essentially, SWIFT is needed for the smooth transaction of money worldwide between banks. So let's say you're a bank in Russia and your customers want to buy something from the USA. Pretty much every bank uses SWIFT to communicate globally. So now, because of the cutoff, none of your customers can send and receive money overseas. The building companies can't buy the materials that they need to build houses. They're not allowed to send money. The retail stores can't buy the inventory they need to sell to customers. The food stores aren't able to import food to put on shelves, which is one of Russia's main imports. It stands at 13% in total. Exporters, when they want to sell something that they've produced, they've worked hard to produce, nope, sorry, we've got to cut you off. And yeah, we know you've got valuable energy and agricultural products, but you won't be able to sell them here. It's almost as if you put a big wedge in the middle of the wheels of the economy and it becomes very hard to get it moving. Harder to sell things, harder for Russia to do business. So the EU Commission President said SWIFT will ensure that these banks are disconnected from the international financial system and harm their ability to operate globally. Cutting banks off will stop them from conducting most of their financial transactions worldwide and effectively block Russian exports and imports. Now, to be clear, there are some alternatives to SWIFT. Moscow has made SPFS, and China, of course they always have their alternatives, they have CIPS. But these are newer makes. They're inefficient and they're nowhere near as effective or smooth or globally easy to use as SWIFT. So Russia and Russian businesses are gonna have a very difficult time sending money, especially internationally. So in 2014, when Russia made the insane decision to take Crimea, they started building up a rainy day fund. So they needed this rainy day fund in case of increased sanctions in the future. The goal was that if the sanctions came, they can just get the money from this fund and prop up their currency, stave off inflation, and stabilize the economy. And it's almost as if Putin expected increased sanctions, as if he had something planned ahead that he might execute in the future. Because in 2014, he started building up a rainy day fund that most countries could be very, very proud of. in 2014, after using some of the reserves, he built it up again from under $400 billion to $630 billion in 2022. So that's the fourth largest in foreign currency reserves. This money is parked in banks and institutions all around the world. So now, if the West imposed sanctions on Russia, Putin's prepared, he doesn't have to worry, and his economy and currency is safe, right? You know, just use the reserves to buttress things back up. Well, maybe Putin didn't take this into account. So after the invasion, the US Treasury announced that it's freezing Russia's foreign exchange reserves held in the country, and other major US allies have done the same. It will be difficult, even impossible, for the Russian central bank to use those reserves to rescue the currency. They no longer can use these dollar reserves, buy their own currency, and save the Russian ruble from a crash. And a crash is exactly what has happened. Russia invades Ukraine, no one wants to hold the Russian ruble anymore, and the currency goes down. Now 100 Russian rubles is worth less than $1. And you might think, hang on, isn't it illegal for another country like the USA to block the use of Russia's foreign reserves that it spent so long saving up? But the USA and other major countries are freezing, not seizing these assets. It doesn't take anything from Russia. Russia still has its reserves, but they can't use them. They're useless. They're no longer a resource for a stable Russian system and no longer useful for the war on Ukraine. So it's a very smart move by the West and the rest of the countries to freeze Russia's huge pile of reserves. Basically, the rest of the world, apart from one or two more sketchy countries, they want nothing to do with Russia after this invasion. The EU and the US has banned all transactions with the Russian central bank, and they've added the Russian Finance Ministry and National Wealth Fund to this ban. The Russian state has, in effect, been stopped from raising debt. So the Americans and the Europeans are saying, there's no way you're going to borrow money from us in order to fund this unethical war. We want nothing to do with you from an economic point of view, apart from, yeah, we do want to keep buying some of your oil because we need that. And on top of this, they're putting pressure on all of the billionaires, the oligarchs who have such an important role in the economy and the decisions of Russia. So more than a dozen billionaire oligarchs with ties to Putin's regime, including Andrei Petrushev from the oil company Rosneft, Yuri Sluyar from United Aircraft, Boris Rottenberg from gas pipeline company, Denis Bortnikovic from VTB Bank, and Kirill Shamalov, ex-husband of Putin's daughter Katerina. They have all had their international assets frozen and have had travel ban lists around the world. So the thinking behind this is, if you cut off these billionaire oligarchs who have so much power in Russia, you make life hard for them. You take away the one thing that means so much to them, money. If you freeze their money, stop their world travel, they're incentivized to want the war to stop. Then also, if through sanctions you put internal pressure by making businesses suffer, the businesses will also be incentivized to want the war to stop. Then the civilians who get less income and their savings are getting destroyed, they too want the war to stop. So the goal of these economic sanctions and these bans and these freezing of assets is to put pressure on Putin from all sides, to have everyone in his system not want this unjust war. And the beauty of economics is we can do this without having to deploy troops or use physical force, at least for now. Now we need to note that Putin was prepared for this. He may be mad, he may be crazy, but he's not stupid. He knows that if you poke the bear by invading Ukraine, the West is going to push back. It was obvious. The West was going to sanction the heck out of Russia. So he built some resources. He built the $630 billion rainy day fund, which didn't quite work out for him. I mean, I don't think he expected most countries to freeze these assets. He boosted domestic production of certain goods and blocked the equivalent of international ones. hence Russia became more independent. He tried to wean his economy so that it was less reliable on the dollar. Russian banks increased withdrawals of foreign currency before they got blocked, so they had more of their own currency which they could have control of. So Putin has been playing this economic game of chess where he was able to make the first move and prepare, and I'm sure he knew years back that he had something up his sleeve, or else he wouldn't have done so much preparation to buttress Russia's economy from economic sanctions. But maybe Putin didn't calculate the extremes that the rest of the world would go to try and stop this war. So Russia has been hurt by these sanctions, and they will continue to get hurt by these sanctions, make no mistake about that. We've talked about the currency crashing, we've talked about how businesses are going to struggle, especially when it comes to importing food and importing certain goods that Russia relies upon. But don't forget about the stock market. The stock market is normally an indicator that leads the economy. It gives us telltale signs of where the economy is heading. So for example, in the 2000 technology crash, you can see that the market started crashing before the economic recession. In 2008, the stock market started going down before economic GDP went down. So you can think of the stock market as an indicator to what investors predict will happen with businesses and the economy in the future. And then let's look at Russia's stock market. It's very rare to see a crash like this happen so quickly in such a short period of time. Since Russia decided to send troops into Ukraine, the stock market has been on a one-way ticket downwards. Over the past couple of months, the market has lost almost half of its total value. It's down 41.3%. So this tells us that investors are predicting Russian businesses to be a lot less profitable in the future. And as per this, we can predict that Russia's economy is gonna get badly hurt. But at the end of the day, only one man knows if all of this economic pain and suffering will be enough to get Russia to turn back and say, okay, we made a bad decision. And that man is Putin. Is he willing to have his country scratched off the map with who the world will do business with? Is he willing to have the savings of his citizens get crushed as the currency takes a big dive? Is he willing for investors in the country to lose almost half of their investments and businesses to no longer import items they need to sell to Russian citizens? I mean, I'm by no means a psychoanalyst, and I wouldn't be able to tell you what goes on in the mind of Vladimir Putin. I'm not sure how much pain he'd be willing to let Russia go through to try and obtain Ukraine, but let's hope that economics and sanctions will be enough to stop this crazy invasion and this crazy war.